For these videos, people submit them into my Discord and like, you know, the mods make sure that like they're good. You have a video that you want me to watch and react to. You can also join my Discord and do stuff like that, as well as make new friends and say hi to people. But you can also submit the videos. I guess this one's Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are embarrassingly bad. Let's watch it.
Because it's time to jump into the world of Pokemon.
Dude, it's all true too, man. Oh shit.
Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are an utter catastrophe. And even if you love
True.
them, I think we can all agree the games were rushed. I think maybe Game Freak needed more time. Just maybe. Now, before I start tearing into them, let me just say that I'm a massive Pokemon fan, as you can see. Despising these games brings me no joy.
Confirms
and
it.
as a massive Pokemon fan, my standards for this franchise continue to get lower every single year. But that doesn't matter because I've been indoctrinated into this religion since the 90s. And I'm willing to overlook massive flaws in game
Gen 1
design
fan, baby.
simply for nostalgia and that familiar sense of dopamine. I put Pokemon stickers on my dresser when I was like 5, and here they are, in Scarlet and Violet. I have shoe boxes filled with cards.
Dude, before we go in, I just want to remind everybody that back in like grade school, maybe like 2nd or 3rd grade, I didn't give a fuck about school, and I just want to remind everybody that my mom set up a poster board. For each gold star, it accumulated like 1 Pokemon pack, and if I got 5, she would take me to Toys R Us. So if I got like an A or a B or something like that, she would add a gold star to this little poster board. And if I racked up 5, she would take me to Toys R Us. And, you know, it's little things like that, man, that motivate people, you know? I don't think I would have gave a fuck if I wasn't given that opportunity.
This Burger King Kids Meal poster from 1999. Why do I have that? I still play Pokemon
Because
Go,
it's,
okay?
it's the
There's
shit,
a picture
that's
of me
why.
in a restaurant playing blue version. Have
Dude!
you ever seen a happier kid?
Dude!
I played every generation besides Black and White 2 and X and Y. And I can safely say that Scarlet and Violet are unequivocally
Did we just become best
the worst
friends?
Pokemon games I've ever played. It's okay to like these games. I question your taste, but it's okay to like them, but please don't defend it, because you deserve better. The reason I say all this is because the Pokemon fan base is rabid and irrational. I know this because I am rabid and irrational, and any criticism, any attack on a Pokemon game is like an affront to their childhood. But a lot of people don't seem to realize just how neutered the Pokemon formula has become, and that's what I'm here to do. Well, since I'm going to be super negative in this video, let's start with the few positives. Character models are unique looking, the Pokemon themselves look pretty good. Animations are alright.
good.
The core gameplay still has the same appeal it always has. The game can be fun. It's always exciting to see and catch new Pokemon. At the very least, I can say that. There are a few new mechanics that make open world gameplay and exploration slightly more intuitive and fun. Auto battles and TM crafting is a cool concept. There's raids and other activities. Scarlet and Violet take off the training wheels pretty fast, and then gives you plenty of freedom in exploring the world, with 3 main quests you can do in any order. Surprisingly, I think all the new Pokemon introduced are fantastic. Terastallizing is a unique gimmick that lets you change up the type of your Pokemon. Battling itself is still a lot of fun. That's about all the good I can say. But before we jump...
I will say this, though. The battling in Gen 9 is, like, probably not at its peak, but it's really damn good. With, like, the power creep of what they've introduced, like the moves and the meta and stuff, the battling is very, very good. I will give it that.
into the bad. Do you want to make your friends jealous? Looking to spice up your home, your man cave, or your gaming headquarters? Look no further than Display, the sponsor of today's video.
We're just gonna skip that. I'm sorry. We're gonna skip that.
The horrific graphics and piss poor performance. But you would be wrong That's too easy. Instead, let's start with what most Pokemon fans seem to be completely overlooking when they appraise this game: the world of Pokemon. It's the first thing Professor Oak says to you in the original games, and in Scarlet and Violet they say something similar. It's time for you too to dive into the world of Pokemon. These games are about the world, and they always have been. If battling is all that matters, then what's the point of making this an open world game? Now, Pokemon has never excelled at graphics. That's not what I'm talking about. Yeah, the game looks and runs like shit, but even if it didn't, you'd still be running around the same lifeless, empty, boring, soulless, poorly rendered grass fields that stretch on for eternity.
One
The
FPS,
areas of
1 mil.
Paldea are the most generic and uninspired I've seen in a Pokemon game. You got grass fields, dirt paths, some cliffs, the occasional beach. There's the gigantic city of Messagoza, and some small towns that all look the same. The only landmark I've seen in Scarlet and Violet is a windmill that runs at 2 frames per second. The starting
You're
area
giving it
of
what?
Sword and Shield had more
2?
visual variety
No.
than anything I've seen in 20 hours playing Scarlet and Violet. You want the difference in these two games
1.
summed up in one image?
1.5.
Here it is. Pokemon rarely
It's
impressed
best I
with
can
its
do,
visuals,
1.5.
but it always impressed when it came to style and the wide variety of biomes and unique areas that made exploration fresh.
Yo,
And the Pokemon
HGSS,
in those
bitch!
areas would fit a theme. You'd encounter fire Pokemon in warm areas such as deserts. It was exciting arriving at a new route or entering a dungeon, a mossy cave, a hideout, or whatever. These games had ruins, power plants, graveyards, ancient towers dedicated to legendary Pokemon, underwater caverns with water flowing through them, and remember climbing Mount Chimney as you went to stop a gang war atop a fucking volcano? You had hideouts, giant boats, shopping malls, martial arts dojos, forests. What does Scarlet and Violet have? Well, I went to this one town and some guy was like, bet you can't make it to the end of our world famous hedge maze. Okay, I made it. What's in the middle? Nothing. What fantastic open world design. Would you believe this area is one of the more
Dude,
memorable in Scarlet and Violet?
that is so
I climbed
true,
the tower
man.
And
The
found
whole
a
game
Gimme Ghost
feels like
Pokemon.
this.
That was the most interesting thing I've seen in Paldea. Like I said, visually the world makes you want to claw your eyes out, but worse yet, it has no style, no grace. This game has even Sword and Shield had a unique aesthetic with its British-inspired buildings, castles, and architecture. There is nothing of interest in the open world. No sense of discovery or thrill besides encountering different Pokemon, which is the bare minimum you expect from a fucking Pokemon game. Items and TMs are scattered around at complete random with no thought required to get them. Unfortunately, level design is no longer a feature of Pokemon games. That idea has been tossed out completely. Remember all the cool puzzles in previous games that required HMs or certain moves to progress through? Remember that surfing minigame in Sun and Moon? Or the trick room? Or how trainers were strategically set up along paths to make traversal interesting and force players to make a decision like, do I go this way and
I mean,
avoid
I'm
that
not
guy, or
opposed
do I
to
fight
getting
him to
rid
go get this
of,
item?
like,
You had
HMs.
choices. Remember how trainers would,
Just to
wander
dedicate,
and look
like, a
around for
move
a fight?
slot,
They'd be on
you know?
bikes
I'm
or
not-
fishing at a pond or doing something.
I'm not going to
instead
fight
of just
anybody about that.
standing there menacingly. Remember how some trainers would camouflage themselves in snow or ash and get the jump on you? Remember dual trainer battles? Now it seems like every trainer in Scarlet and Violet is just standing in a random location doing nothing. Like they couldn't be bothered to program a basic walk
To
cycle.
be fair, they were doing that before.
Like a lemon?
And they wait for you to initiate battle by talking to them. It's not exciting. As
You-
far
I
as
mean,
I've seen,
you did
there
that before,
are almost
though.
no traditional linear type levels to break up the monotony of the open world. Any linear levels they do have are fucking laughable. Like you go to a Team Star hideout, you walk in an open field, watch Pokemon appear out of thin air, hit R to auto battle, do that 30 times, then fight the leader, and that's it. I'm really scratching my noggin on that one. Or how about the gyms? Those have got to be good at least. They're always a major highlight of these games. The bug gym, if you can even call it that, is just a flat field with a giant olive
This
and some fences.
was
and you push
so-
the olive to the end of the track in a sequence that can only be described as jank AF. You do that
Dude.
and then go somewhere else to fight the gym leader.
Putting
is this
the
the best
olive-
they could come up with? I love at the
in the
olive
goal
test,
was
there's this person that
so
wants you to battle him for a
ridiculous.
shortcut when the battle will inevitably take longer than just going the normal route. The gyms in Sword and Shield were simple and easy, but, you know, they had something of substance. Certainly doesn't hold a candle to the trials in Sun and Moon. I mean, these gyms are just fucking terrible. It's pitiful. The map screen is utter dog shit too. Anytime you pull it out, it seems to auto-rotate, causing you to constantly lose track of where you are going.
Yeah, the map
In
was
open world
annoying.
games, you've probably gotten
It was either
accustomed to being able to
too
put
zoomed
down
in
multiple
or
markers
too
to
zoomed
keep track
out.
of things you want to go back to, but not in Scarlet and Violet. You get one marker, and that's it. And what are these icons?
What do they mean?
Seems like a massive oversight to not include a legend. I mean, every map has a legend so you know what the symbols are. Before launch, Game Freak boasted about the giant city of Mesagoza and the school academy, but you can't really explore the areas of Paldea like any other Pokemon game. You are only allowed to enter a few specific buildings. Most consist of a single room. Almost all shops have been turned into a menu screen. You can no longer break into people's houses, talk to them, and steal their stuff. Pokemon centers are just desks now. There's very clear technical limitations being imposed.
The way they did
like
Pokemon
the
centers
school
was a
being
little
series
weird.
of segmented areas that you warp to through a loading screen instead of walk to. Imagine making a school without hallways and lockers. It's just bizarre. But the game likely can't render that sort of thing without having a seizure. You know what would have been impressive? If they let you move through doors and areas without having to load to a new screen. One of the big highlights for Pokemon games was arriving at a new area, checking out all the buildings, talking to NPCs, seeing what they'd say, or if they had a side quest for you, maybe a special item, or a Pokemon to trade. Rarely do you encounter NPCs in Scarlet and Violet that provide something of value to the gameplay or the world itself. I don't have reasons to explore the worlds when the towns feel so lifeless and I can't go anywhere. So in exchange for puzzles, dungeons, unique level design, interesting locales, a dynamic open world, what have we gotten in exchange for all of that? A world where every city has 15 sandwich shops. This is one of Pokemon's main quest lines, and I'm astonished at how much the game is centered around working at fucking Subway. The people that defend this game
Dude,
and its open
actually-
world have no further ambitions than the developers.
So
and that makes
true.
me sad. It all looks the same. It's lifeless, soulless commercial diarrhea passed off as a poor excuse for an open world. And if you still think the world is awesome and you love Paldea, then describe it. Describe it to me. Tell me what makes it special or unique. Pause the video. Write up a clever comment.
You're gonna say something clever. Go on, say something clever.
Because I'm fucking dying to know what is so impressive about this. Pokemon is a franchise that has changed less than Call of Duty over a lifespan 10 years longer than Call of Duty. Now, Pokemon's formula has always made it one of the best, most accessible turn-based games out there, but it's been held back by outdated design choices.
The thing is too about the sandwich mechanic is that, like, I get that in this like modern kind of era where Zoomers want their shinies like now, and they can't bear to actually work for it and spend 178 hours and do 10,140 tries, like a person who really wants to work for it. The shiny mechanic in Gen 9 was so... It's like every game that comes out, it reduces the value of your shiny Pokemon. And now with the sandwich mechanic and then the shiny charm, it's just like shinies don't really mean much anymore. I remember like whenever I did like a shiny hunt, like before I stopped playing the game, it took me literally 10 minutes to find a shiny Iron Thorns, which is like the shiny, Iron Thorns, like the Paradox version of Tyranitar. It took me 10 minutes, dude. 10 minutes? I don't want to take it. I don't want fucking 10 minutes. I want to work for it. That's just kind of how it is, and it's just shinies don't really mean much anymore. The sandwich mechanics just kind of, yeah. Everybody's working at Subway because everyone wants shiny Pokemon.
Choices. These games have wasted and continue to waste my fucking time. No one is talking about waiting seconds in between little actions. I can accept the frame rate drops, the camera flipping out, the textures and visual glitches, but damn, Is it a slog to do anything?
Yeah, I
Everything
can
that should be
accept the
snappy,
game
like
not
menus,
functioning
dialogue,
correctly.
and battles feel super slow. Then
Yeah.
add on the actual performance issues that slow the game down, and it becomes a sloth simulator. I remember feeling this way back in Diamond and Pearl. I came up with this cool strategy for a bomb of snow where I'd use ingrain, leftovers, and hail. So I'd heal consistently and do damage over time. I soon stopped using this strategy because of how many fucking text boxes would appear and interrupt the game. This should have been changed in Gen 4. We are at Gen 9. Venonat became confused. Venonat is confused. Venonat hurt itself in its confusion. I know what confusion does. I know what the status effects do. We all do. You don't have to stop the gameplay for 3 seconds each time to tell me. As soon as the animation is finished, it should bring up the UI, or let me skip this crap with a setting or a toggle or something. But going through each and every single turn waiting for the text to pop up is just boring as hell. That cloth Pokemon has an ability that raises 3 stats and lowers 2. The game stops 5 times to play each stat change individually. Every single time, cloth is reduced to half health. I'm never going to
This guy
use
sounds
this
like
Pokemon. What's the issue
a
with them
speedrunner
all
or
going
somebody
at
who
once?
is interested
This series
in
is well
speedrunning.
established. It's actually the most established franchise. Everyone knows how the games work. Selecting Pokemon takes like 3 seconds for them to appear instead of being instant. Using potions and revives is still done one at a time. These things wouldn't bother me so much if it weren't for my next issue with Scarlet and Violet. Game Freak is notorious for cutting features that quite literally only provide positive benefits to the game and its fan base. Skipping battle animations, for example.
Yeah, like
Wanna
getting rid of
try speedrunning
megas.
the game? Well, here you go. It's a feature so simple that it worked on the Game Boy. This feature has been cut from Scarlet and Violet. As to why, this Reddit user has an explanation. Honestly, with how shit the performance is and all the bugs, I'm almost certain they removed it to hide the delay between every action and animation. This makes sense to me, and perhaps it's not a coincidence that this is the first
devs
main
suck,
entry to
so,
remove
yeah,
this quality of
we
life
got rid of a feature.
Can't have a national dex anymore because, you know, Game Freak wanted to make the animations better.
Meanwhile...
Set selection. In past games, this was a simple setting for convenience and difficulty, allowing you to skip the option of swapping Pokemon when your opponent sent out a new one. This feature is also gone.
They
for
got
no
rid of
discernible
the
reason.
ability
It's clear that Scarlet and
to
Violet are Game Freak's way of
skip
trying to
battle
bring
animations
ambition
in
to
this
Pokemon
game.
and raise the bar. But their
Just
current development
because-
cycle isn't suited for this type of game.
No
Clearly.
reason.
And they have to make massive cuts in every category just to make it barely functional.
It's
The
just
funniest
not.
part,
It's just not there.
Pokemon is a shadow of what it once was.
not there.
And it's never been more successful. And you thought I was just here to complain about the graphics, visuals, poor performance, ridiculous glitches, and pop-in. You think so?
Good
little
God,
of me.
man.
This game is remarkably unpolished, glitchy. All those clips of people like contorting and twisting and clapping their elbows and all that weird shit, I haven't experienced that much myself. That happens in co-op, but you will be hard-pressed to find many games uglier than this. This is close to PUBG on Xbox One. We're arriving.
So with this game, I saw this clip on Twitter a long time ago. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's like with this game, it's not out of the ordinary for Pokemon to like go out of bounds. Somebody was shiny hunting something, and it was right there, and it was right like next to the wall, and it just completely went out of bounds, and then they were fucked out of their shiny. You know, it's just Game Freak things, dude. Anymore.
At Cyberpunk.
I wish I could find it. I'd love to show it to you, man.
Tears of awfulness. Now, people are going to try to say again, the graphics aren't everything, and they never have been for Pokemon. You would be right in saying this. However, I find it hard to enjoy any game if I can barely fucking look at it. There's this part in the beginning where you get to the top of a lighthouse and your generic rival is like, wow, isn't it pretty? And then they show this. Yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty fucking ugly. This is an open world game where the open world is never fully rendered. No matter where you are, something is glitching out, popping in, or it's textured like an N64.
What I think made Pokemon games so charming was the simplicity of them. And I think what they're doing now is introducing a lot of like, they're trying to make it like more complicated than it needs to be. You know, we look at like Pokemon Red and Blue. Yeah, it's boomer stuff. Yeah, Red and Blue, like Gen 1 or fucking, you know, but it is simple. And but it works. And of course, there's a lot of jank with like Red and Blue. But look at all its predecessors. Like, we love Gen 2. We love Gen 3, we love Gen 4, Gen 5, Gen 6 and 7, you know, got a little more like 3D-ish, but they kept their simplicity. They functioned. There wasn't like these crazy graphical glitches in the games. They functioned as they were supposed to. Now, with like the open world and it's apparent that the devs are just too incompetent to make a functional game. They're introducing way too many factors, way too many variables to make these games feel like they were before. They don't feel simple anymore. They feel like jank pieces of garbage. And that's why we like Pokemon so much, is because of the simplicity. Just, it's kind of like Mega Man. Mega Man 1 through 6. Mega Man 1 through 6 played the exact same game, but we loved all of them. We just were looking forward to the next one. And it's, you know, that's how Pokemon was. And now it's just kind of like, ooh boy, you know. It's almost like we don't even want Gen 10 to exist. We know it's going to, but we're not looking forward to it. I'm sure not.
This game can barely run, and we know it's not the hardware because, as many have pointed out, Breath of the Wild was a launch title for the Switch, and we've seen games like Xenoblade Chronicles, which look pretty damn good. The Switch is a weak platform, but that's what some developers can make of it. The pop-in is ridiculous.
And that's a good point.
People in the same room will morph into existence if you step 5
The
feet
hardware
from them.
was a
And
shit
PCs that get
excuse.
stuck
People
in
were
their
like, well,
cycle
it's the
evaporate
Switch.
like
No, man,
Sirius Black.
Xenoblade
They
3.
just disappear. Like, there's always something flickering on the screen. Textures are pathetically bad with repeated low-quality patterns. Just look at this, Cliff. Super Mario Sunshine looked better than this, and that was a title from 2002 on a fucking GameCube. Lighting changes
To be fair,
abruptly all the
GameCube
time.
was
You walk
a
into cave
well
and pop. It
polished
seems like the
console.
game's internal clock, its day and night cycle,
But
doesn't
still,
get updated
no
until
excuse.
the end of a battle. So if you fight a really long one, it'll just whoop. You can also get a good idea of how long a game was play tested by how easy or often you can break out of it. No doubt you've seen that wild footage of people just phasing through the bottom of the map, or jumping on something and getting stuck and then black screen. I also noticed they haven't figured out stair technology yet. Wait, hold up. Is there an invisible wall here? Are you serious? Wait, what's blocking me? It's wide open. Dude, what the fuck is that? Oh, that's why. Apparently one of Koraidon's moves creates an invisible barrier that stretches across the whole zone. Frame rate? God, it's awful. Any distant objects are rendered at like 7 frames a second. Sometimes they completely stop moving. It runs at a consistent below 30, and only in specific enclosed areas does it barely hit 30 frames per second. NPCs in Pokemon run at reduced frame rate when at a distance.
This Pokemon is not the only game that suffers from this. I mean, we recently had a travesty, Dragon's Dogma 2, where people were literally killing NPCs within towns to make the frame rate better.
Wouldn't that be an enjoyable experience? Every technique has been used and every corner cut to optimize for performance, and yet the game still runs like trash.
I'm not trying to justify anything here.
Shadows barely exist in this world. You never notice how unnatural something looks when it doesn't have a shadow? Like this area that is blue despite the sun being out. The sun doesn't cast light in this game. It's so bizarre. What's with this door that keeps changing colors when I approach it? Why do cliffs get distorted when I run towards them? Scarlet and Violet are similar to Cyberpunk in the sense that you can never immerse yourself in the world because of how distracting and obtrusive the visuals are. If you really want a great video to break this down, I'd say watch this one from Digital Foundry. Adding on to the ugly factor, Game Freak has clearly forgotten how to make a functional camera work in a 3D space. They figured out how to do this on N64 hardware, but but they get a pass here. While it's cool that battles can take place literally anywhere, the camera often has no idea where it should be, creating fights where you and your Pokemon are barely visible, if at all, or sometimes Pokemon are just falling off cliffs, or they clip through the geometry, walking up to shops and you just phase through the door and the screen turns to mush. It's like, what the fuck am I looking at? If you walk around a tight enclosed area like a place with a lot of cliffs or this playground, it's so disorienting. I remember Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 having more dynamic cinematography that showed off the Pokemon as they used their moves and took damage. You know, it would zoom around the battlefield and zoom in on the Pokemon, and this one, it's just a static shot. It made fights more interesting to watch. Cutscenes in this game are unacceptable. As with every other aspect of the game, Game Freak is as lazy here as they possibly could be. It is insulting how often they use transitions to hide sequences that they clearly didn't bother to animate. Like this one, where Koraidon yells, the ground starts shaking, and this presumably causes the cliff to break and the player falls, but like, after you fall, there's no rubble there, and the camera just awkwardly zooms in on the ground before fading to black. Like, there's no sense of urgency. You couldn't make this scene any less exciting if you tried. And what the fuck was that? He just hits the ground, bounces up, and grabs his phone. And you gotta love how there's a fade to white effect anytime Koraidon or a Pokemon comes out of its Pokeball. Because again, they don't want to animate that. By far the worst is this scene where you're talking to some lady on a television screen, and I shit you not, it fades to black 7 times. Probably because the game has to reload the area each time, and the black screen is a loading screen. At best, it is horrifically incompetent.
That didn't happen with me.
There is no passion for storytelling. Anytime there's a crossfade transition, it freezes for a second or two and looks terrible. What if I did that for all of my videos? For every transition, it just like froze for 1 second until the next shot. The lack of voice acting is extremely awkward because it means they have to have music blaring over every cutscene. Otherwise, it's just silence. They couldn't even be bothered to do like what Breath of the Wild
I wouldn't want
Banjo-Kazooie
voice acting in
like
Pokemon at this
characters that
point.
make little noises or grunts. They animated as little as they possibly could and slapped a transition on everything else. So, in conclusion, Scarlet and Violet are a disgrace. These games are an embarrassment. Game Freak and the Pokemon Company should be ashamed for releasing something this terrible so quickly after Arceus. But thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did and subscribe to the Act Man for more awesome content. Make sure to check out Display in order.
Here, I'll go ahead and link the video for you guys. Go and show them some love. That was a funny video.